Yeah, I know, every writer's bane. I began to treat it like my part-time job because that was what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be my full-time job. And if I wanted it to be my full-time job, I had to start treating it like it was one. Because I love writing more than I love almost anything else.
Welcome to the Author Like a Boss podcast, the podcast for indie authors who want to improve their writing, up-level their marketing, make money with their books, and have fun doing it. Now, on to the show with your host, ALAB Barnard.
Hey bosses, if you have an author website or are thinking about getting one, I have a special offer for you. Stacy Sowers of Authors Mojo builds websites, is a technology coach for indie authors, and is my co-author for the book Build Your Author Website. She's also an indie author herself, which makes this so exciting. For listeners of this podcast, Stacy is offering a free author website consultation. If you already have a website and want some feedback for improving it, she'll do a comprehensive evaluation of your site. If you don't yet have a website, but are thinking about taking that next step, she'll walk you through what you need to know to have a beautiful and effective author website. To take advantage of this offer and get a free author website consultation, go to authorlikeaboss.com/mojo. Hello and happy authoring, everybody. We are here with Ben Reeder. He is an author. He is Ben Reeder's claim they found him in a pineapple patch in Hawaii and brought him home, which was their way of telling him he was adopted. He grew up in South Texas reading Tolkien, Asimov, and Robert E. Howard. Ben has always loved telling stories, and in high school, he wrote pulp-style action adventures for his friends. Ben has been filling notebooks and hard drives with stories and ideas ever since. Oh my gosh, Ben. Okay, so we automatically have an idea that you are into science fiction and fantasy. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your author journey?
Well, sure. Yes. My favorite topic, me.
Yes, everybody's favorite topic.
As you can tell, right? Exactly. As you can tell, I actually come from a family where storytelling was a thing. My parents had a story for everything. And as a kid, what was with me is I wasn't the kid who was really into sports ball. To me, it's all sports ball. I wasn't really the kid who was, into trading cards or things like that, and bear in mind, this is the 70s, when a mobile phone was a really long cord that attached your phone in the wall. But this was about the time when Star Wars came out. So I would take my action figures out into the yard and tell stories with them. And that's kind of where it started. And on my Amazon biography, I do put there as like, my mom always used to tell me, you need to write this stuff down. And that's kind of what got me interested in the idea that, hey, maybe the writing is something that I would be good at. Maybe storytelling is something I'd be good at. So over the years, I kind of honed the craft. My parents were not impressed with some of the stories I told. No, Mom, really, there were ninjas. That's how the lamp broke. But every story is more exciting with ninjas. But anyways, so over the years, I got to the point, and then, I started mastering, joined together writing or cursive, which they don't teach very much anymore. And started getting to the point where, I enjoyed doing this. It was fun. In high school, Tolkien and Asimov and all of that, I was in South Texas. I was a jock, kind of a jock / nerd hybrid, half elf. I'd never really fit in either camp. But at one point, I was basically, started reading pulp action novels that my dad had. And so that was kind of where I got my start in it, is that, okay, the people I hang out with like these stories. So I read some of the stories and I came up with my own set of stories, and I started writing them, longhand in high school. And one day I got caught, as it were, by my English teacher. He took them, he read them, he told me they were horrible, but I showed promise. And by accident, I left them on my desk. Well, one of my friends was in that class afterwards. He read it, and he found me, and he says, "Look, this is great. Where's the rest of it?" was like, "Oh, first of all, thank you for finding it." But then it just kind of began a thing. As I would give it to one friend, who'd give it to another, who'd give it to another, and so over time, I'm like, "Oh, wow, I might actually be kind of good at this. I might actually be able to do this." So, cue like 30 years, and what really got me to the point, because I never could finish, never ever could finish, and so cue 20, 30 years, and I blame Jim Butcher for writing Deadbeat. And because I get to there, I pick this book up, and it's like New York Times bestselling author. I'm like, what? Okay, this sounds pretty cool. Deadbeat, and I start reading it, and I was going, my God, this guy's a snarky asshole. I love him. I love this guy. I start hearing my own snarky sense of humor resonating in the Dresden Files, and I just get to the point where like going, oh, if this guy, using his authentic voice, just off the cuff snark, if he can become a New York Times best-selling author, I've got a shot. So, if this, I think that's the thing is I got to the point where I really believed in my voice. So I sat down and I started writing The Demon's Apprentice. Actually, at the time, it was called Second Chance. And I kept on getting these signs telling me, hey, you need to keep doing this. One of which was I was nearing the end of the first draft. And I posted page 1 on a page on back in the days of LiveJournal, back on LiveJournal called Fangs, Fur, and Fae. And so I put page 1 because the one of the people on there put page 1, and so post yours. So a few days later, I get an email going, "Hi, my name is Miriam Chris. I was wondering if you're looking for representation." Yeah. I'm sitting here going, but then of course I'm going, scam. So I reach out to an author I knew and ask, who is this lady? And she says, "Oh my God, send her your shit. And so eventually, Miriam read the rest of my stuff and realized, oh, you're not ready, and turned me down. But yeah, I'm sitting here going, oh my God, this is so backwards. This is not how this is supposed to work. I'm supposed to be rejected by a dozen agents before anybody even says, send me a little more. So I'm going, this is a sign, So I try and I try. I don't get anywhere with it. And it was called Second Chance. It was just, I tore it down and I started re-editing it because I'm just like, my God, this is, I'm doing something wrong. I need to fix it. So I'll go back and I figure out, oh, yeah, my character's a total Mary Sue. Yeah, it takes a special kind of self-awareness when you go, oh, God, I suck.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, oh, but here's how I can fix that. So, I go back and I tear it down. Well, I get a friend of mine to help me edit it, to basically get me a second pair of eyes on it, because I realized I was writing in an echo chamber. Everything I was writing, yeah, this is great, because it was me saying that. So I sent it to my friend Laura out in California, and she writes me one day as going, well, I was going over some stuff and I was visiting with a friend of mine who is a writer for for a small press out here. And she asked me about your book. I was going, oh, okay, well, you can tell her. Well, a few days later after that, she calls me back. She messages me back. She says, yeah, her, okay, well, I've got this reputation for not working on crap. So her publisher would like to take a look at your book. And I'm going, what? Yeah, because this point I'm post-verbal. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, okay. So we changed the name and called it The Demon's Apprentice. Present it to him. And bear in mind, by now I am, an honest-to-God Jim Butcher idolizer. It's like, Jim Butcher's God, and I still pretty much think that, although now I'm, more along the lines of, oh, wow, Jim Butcher's just really, really cool. But so he gives me the ultimate compliment this really reads a lot like the Dresden Files. I'm going, really? Well, then. So, yeah, I start off with a small press. And from minute one, I was happy, but I was like, don't jump too high. You're not gonna, and this is the thing that happened. I go with Pendraig. They're a good press, first of all. Don't get me wrong on this, because I love Pendraig. I loved my experience with them. Peter was a tremendously wonderful guy, and he worked with me as much as he could. But when you're working with a small press, you're working with a small press. So first thing, I was kind of disappointed in the cover, but they did get a pro. It's just that, and it was a beautiful cover. And I do this comparison all the time. It was a beautiful cover, but it wasn't an effective cover. And Pendraig was still kind of getting their legs underneath them at the time. So I go, okay, I put it out, and I get go to a con, and granted, I sold every book I brought to the con, but I only brought 20, but I also only had 4 hours to sell. So, I'm going, yeah, this is pretty good. I dig this. And I released a second book, Page of Swords. And if I was disappointed with the first cover, I was absolutely appalled by the second. They had lost their cover artist, and it was a vast difference from the first one. I'm like, oh man, I don't feel like doing this again. Well, about this time, my friend D.A. Roberts goes and writes a zombie book. And it's 150,000 page doorstopper of a zombie book, which in that genre is kind of unusual. And D.A. and I would game together. We lived like 6 blocks from each other. At a certain point, I ran a game for him that basically gave him nightmares for months. And he's going, you know what? You do really good. You should try your hand at the zombie genre. So I'm going, okay. But I really didn't want to throw it at Pendraig. They don't do zombie. They did his because it was Norse based. I was just like going, no, let's go back to my roots. Let's go back to those pulp serial-esque type, guns and gore and, shoot 'em up and one-liners after the kill. Let's go back to my Max Bullet Destroyer days, and just have some fun with it. So I self-published it. Now, bear in mind, the first 2 years I'm with Pendraig, I make about $200-300 a year.
Okay.
And that is with Demon's Apprentice. Actually, I had the great good fortune to meet the author of the Mercy Thompson series,
Patricia Briggs.
Patty Briggs. Oh yeah, I've got the shirt I won from her, and her husband and I get to talking. Because he asked me, "Oh, you're an author. What'd you write? Young adult urban fantasy." Looks at me, I'm in my 40s. He's going, "Young adult? How'd you get into young adult?" By accident, because my main character just happened to be 15. So we get talking, and he's going, and he goes through my reading. He's like, "I really like this. Let me buy a copy off of you." He goes home, he reviews it, puts it on.
He does her website.
He did
basically.
Her website. Passed away. He was doing her and on Hurog. So there's a review in February of 2016 of The Demon's Apprentice, and it's good and better than good. I'm just like going, yeah. So that was my best month ever. While I was with Pendraig. So, I'm thinking, but I get into, so I decide, let's kind of go self-publishing. Let's go, zombie for a while. Let's have a little fun with writing. And so I talked to some other zombie authors, Sean Chesser, who's kind of like the godfather of zombie right now, and Chris, Mark Tufo, Chris Philmont, just a lot of good authors. So my name starts getting out there as a potential zombie author. Also was talking to Shane Moore, who ran New Babylon, Babylon. And so I released my first one, Zompox Survivor. Total. This was one of those times where I did everything you're not supposed to do. I edited it myself. I did my own cover. I did my own, front titling. everything, all the things you're not supposed to do. But the smartest thing I did was I priced it at 99 cents for the first month. So I sold thousands of copies. I mean, just hundreds a day. Of course, at 99 cents, I was following one of my first basic rules, which is make it easy. Make it easy for people to make that decision to buy that first book. So that book hits the top 100. Well, it starts off in the 20,000 range, which, is higher than Demon's Apprentice ever got at that point, on Amazon. And I'm going, well, this is kind of cool. And then a few days later, it skyrockets into the top 100. And I'm like, and I still have it printed out because I was at work and I was checking Amazon at the time. And this was back in the days before Book Report. KDP was the wonderful little. This was even back before Kindle Unlimited. Back when, yeah. Yeah, back in those days. This is like way back in 2012. Still using, So it goes up to the top 100. I'm going, where the hell did this come from? Well, Sean Chesser and Mark Tufo and several other guys had put it on their pages, going, "Hey, this guy wrote a good book. Go ahead and read it." And suddenly, this huge upswell, and I had a following. I was just going, whoa, and I started getting good reviews. I started, so, I'm just going, well, this is awesome. Now, on the flip side of this, and this is something that young authors need to be aware of, there is a lot of first of all, there's a lot of community out there, and it's great, but there are the occasional trolls. So I started getting these negative reviews people who were fans of D.A. Roberts. And basically it was because, my writing style, I was basing it out of Springfield, same as he was. And, because Springfield, Missouri, it's where I live, and it's where every writer starts their stuff there, and people were raking me over the coals over it. I ignored it. It just and it went away. It didn't stop me, So the first one does tremendously well, and I'm going, well then. So I'm working on the second one. I pull, and this is the other good thing about Pendragon. Peter realized that Demon's Apprentice wasn't doing as well as it could, and so when I ask him for the rights back, he's going, sure, I get it. It's been nice working with you, and, all luck to you. We basically was very professional, did very, and it was very nice. And for a young pagan author, I would say aim at Pendragon Press. Peter passed away a few years ago, almost a month after he gave me my rights back. But Pendragon is still going strong, and I would say if you're a young pagan author, aim for them because they do specialize in sort of pagan, pagan stories and stuff. So I take Demon's Apprentice, and I take it down, and I go through and I re-edit it. I kind of make some changes, but I was going, I need my own cover because that art belonged to Pendragon. So I go to my Angela Gulick, girl I've known since 1979, and she was getting back into her art career and stuff like that. I was going, look, can you do my cover? I trust you. You're good at what you do. You've always been a good artist. And I was going, and then here's what I have. And she's going, okay, that's nice. I had this whole complex thing of, looking at the back, dripping off of it, circle in the background. She's going, okay, yeah, sure. Which is, I'm going, but let me also throw some concepts at you that, I came up with while we were talking. She shows me the original, the Demon's Apprentice cover that I have now. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I wanted all. Yeah, you win. Yeah, it's just like, all that other crap that I was doing. Yeah. Just forget that. I never said that. In fact, let's never talk about that again.
Well, let me stick to writing.
Let's stick to writing. You do the covers, okay, sister? And so she does the Demon's Apprentice cover, and she also does the Page of Swords cover. So I've got two books that I'm getting ready to go out. I throw Demon's Apprentice out in December, near the end of the year. By January, it had generated almost $5,000.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have some questions for you before we I know you still have more story to go, but I have a couple of questions before we get, because I have take notes and I have a list now. So I know I don't want the list to get any longer. We will come back to this.
We'll circle around back to
we'll circle around back. So a couple of questions. When you first said you never finished, what started, for a while? And I know you were younger, but what was the thing that caused you to then finish? Because that's something that a lot of authors, when they're first starting, really struggle with. Like they'd have a hard time finishing that first book or the first couple of books.
Exactly. And I think, for me, it was two very personal things. One, of course, I read Jim Butcher, and I actually started to believe in myself. Because what I would do what like a lot of authors do. I would get started, and I'd get to a point, and I'd just kind of peter out, and the inspiration would go away. And I was like, and then I would go on to something else, and I'd let that, I just kind of let that lie, thinking I'd come back to it. Then, a year or two later, I'd come back to it. I was going, where was I going with this?
Yes.
Yes. I get lost. I was like, I don't know where I was going. Second was the idea that I actually did believe in myself, to the point that, I basically sat down and said, I am going to finish. Now, see, bear in mind, this is in 2006 when Butcher released Deadbeat, right? After Butcher released Deadbeat. And so for a year, I allowed myself to work on nothing else but, what was then Second Chance, because I realized you've got to finish something. Now, I just finished massage therapy school. I had just begun to finish things. I was basically, I was at that point of, I need to start, just finishing things. I've been working at a credit card company for about 2 or 3 years, and that was sucking. And also, I got to the point where I realized, I go home, I watch movies, I play video games, I do things that other creative people have done. I want to be one of those people. And it became a point of, there can be no more screwing around. I began to treat it like a job. Every writer's bane. I began to treat it like my part-time job, because that was what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be my full-time job. And if I wanted it to be my full-time job, I had to start treating it like it was one. Because I love writing more than I love almost anything else.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love so much what you've just said, Ben. Like, so that I, have you ever had where you're watching a show or you watch a movie that you just love, and then at the end they're like, or somehow you find out, you're like, oh, the director's are cut, or the producer or whatever, and you look at the director and they're like 25 or something, and you're like, that show was amazing, and that's somebody else's creativity, because they were not sitting at home watching movies or TV. They were creating on their own. I have a hard time watching TV now, not because I don't like it, but because I'm like, this is time that I could be making something myself.
Exactly. This is time I could be writing.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
And it's the thing that I think really, it was where I made the decision, I'm going to write for a living. And it's where I made the decision to go all in.
Okay. I have another question.
Okay.
Because I think that's really powerful. So we can sit with that for a minute, you guys. And I think there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that stuck out to me, that getting to a point in your life generally where you complete things, because I've had that too. Like in the last 2 years, I'm like, completing is so satisfying. And sometimes it takes a while, but it feels so good. I want to complete all the things that I've started.
Right, exactly.
And then I think you can also kind of practice completing in other parts, and that will in other parts of your life, and that will help you complete in the parts that maybe you're scared or nervous about, like writing.
Exactly.
I have another question for you.
Okay.
You said that you were doing this one kind of story, and then you switched to just have fun and do zombie stories.
Yeah.
Was there something in the I'm just going to have fun doing this? Do you think that went into your writing, or like, do you think there was something about the just having fun that impacted your writing and or your sales?
Okay. Here's what having fun did for my writing. It sped it up. Going into writing Zombie Survivor, I wasn't going for anything deep. I wasn't going for anything, any really deeper meaning or anything like that. I was just going and, okay, here's this guy and he has adventures and stuff blows up. And so that was, it was just, they're shorter. They came faster. It was just like I wrote 3 of those in a time frame of 2 years. I released 2 in 2015. Yeah, 2015. I released 4 books. 2 of them I had already written. That was The Demon's Apprentice and Page of Swords. The 3rd and 4th were the 2nd and 3rd in the Zombie Survivor series. And it was just one of those things of, okay, it was easier. It was fun. It's easy writing. It's not all that deep. It's not all that difficult. It was just, so it makes for faster, easier writing just because I'm having fun, but I don't think it makes for necessarily better writing for me. Mm-hmm. Because my Demon's Apprentice series sells so much better than my Zombie Survivor series. And that is because, I put more depth into it. I put more thought into it, and I bring things in from previous stories and stuff like that. So it's taking me, I guess, I released, like Prom Night. The last one I released, came out at the end of March. And we're coming up on December, and I'm just finishing up True Colors, the next book, almost 9 months later. So, those take, because those plots are more complex. Mm-hmm. Zombie Survivor, I'm just like, okay, he's got to get from Springfield to a safe place. Okay, there's one book. Second book, he's got to get out of Kansas City and it's on fire. It just, the plots are much more straightforward. Because the emphasis there is on the action, on how he solves the problems I throw at him. So it just speeds up my writing, is what it does.
Okay. Okay, because I appreciate you sharing that, because I know, and I've talked about this, and with other authors, and there's like a trend to try and release a book a month. Okay, and I know, right? Do that. Right? I know, right? And I looked at this done in 3 months program that I've created, and I'm like, okay, if you hire an editor and you do this, like, you can have somebody else working on your book while you're not working on it, and that time is still time moving forward. Anyways, if you guys go and check out Done in 3 months, you can see at the end, I have a calendar where you can take 3 months to write a book. Right. And release 7 in a year, because on the months when your editor has it, you're working on your next book. Anyway, right.
No, I got you.
Right. But I wanted to, I wanted to recognize that there's some people that are releasing a book a month, and I've read some of them, and they're not bad. Like, there is a kind, they're not bad stories, but they don't have the depth that I like. I'm like, they're very light, very, you're like, oh yeah, you get, as long as you know what you're expecting when you pick them up, right? You know what you're like, this is what I expect, and this is what I'm going to get, because this is this kind of story. But for the ones that I like want to buy and keep on my shelf, those are not the book a month ones. Those are not those stories.
Exactly. And see, that's why The Demon's Apprentice takes me, usually 6 to 9 months, depending upon how long it is and where I am with it. True Colors took a long time, a longer time, I think, than normal, because I am pulling together a lot of storylines that I had going before. Because for instance, it took me about 2-3 years to write Demon's Apprentice, 1 year to write Page of Swords, and then 6 months to write to write Vision Quest, the third in that series, and then Charm School was another 6 to 9 months. So it depends. But I got, like I said, in the Zombie series, 3 months, I'm done.
Right. Right.
And so if you want depth to a story, if you want to go back and because here's the other thing about the Demon's Apprentice series, it inspires people to go back. And there are people who know that series better than I do.
Mm.
They're going, no, his name was thus and such. You did such and such. And I'm going, oh, crap, I did. Yeah. And the fun part is going back and explaining that away.
That's one reason not to include too much backstory, you guys, is because you can explain things without ruining the backstory. You change that backstory. Nobody knows.
A prime example of how that can make for a better story. So I'd released Demon's Apprentice, and then I released Page of Swords, and someone was going, hey, and I was getting ready to re-release Page of Swords, and someone's coming back and going, hey, you mentioned that Shade's eyes are two different colors in the book. I'm like going, oh crap, I did. Okay, how do we work that? How do I fix this? And so I realized that when she is fully human, her eyes are gray. When she's a wolf, because she's a werewolf, her eyes are amber. So in between those two is when she's green-eyed.
Ben, clever. You guys, if you read his book later, realize he did that on purpose. It was not, how do I fix this? It was like, this is my purposeful thing and every author always does that.
Exactly. Well, here's the thing. It made her a deeper character because it gave me a tool to go, this is when Shade's feeling very emotional. Her eyes go green because her wolf's coming out. Oh my God, I'm a genius.
And that's how having feedback from writers can make you a better writer, or from readers can make you a better writer.
Right. And we never make mistakes. We just have things we didn't.
You just that's like the whole point of writing your own books, is to be able to make the world the way that you want it to be, and then change things whenever you want.
Right, exactly.
I wanted to ask you one more thing. See, I still am addressing this list that I made earlier. I wanted to ask you, so you said when you started to put out, we'll come back to the Demon's Apprentice. Well, let me think. One thing I want to say before I move on to the next topic is that a lot of these authors who are releasing a book a month, this is all they do. All they do is write. Like, they don't have a side job or a job that they're doing and writing on the side. By the time they get to book a month, they've been writing
that's
full time for a while. Yeah. So it's not like they're trying to squeeze it in. So I don't want anybody to have the expectation that they should be writing a book a month.
No. And bear in mind, I did the Demon's Apprentice 3 hours a night while I had a full-time job.
Yeah.
And now for a couple of years, I was writing full time, and I made some mistakes that made it so I'm going, I need to go back to having a full time job. And that's actually made my writing better.
Can you okay. New topic. Can you tell us about that? Why has having a full time job made your writing better?
Well, okay. We're actually basically it makes me I have a full-time job, therefore I do not have to worry about my income. My full-time job pays for my insurance and everything like that. And also, when I was writing full-time, I was not on a schedule. And so I could write when I wanted to, things like that. And, I did write. I did, throw out a couple of books. I did have a couple of good years. But it was also one of those things, it was very undisciplined. I was writing from home, and I was writing where all of my favorite distractions lived. So it make it more difficult to keep on track when, I've got, Fallout to play or Facebook to go to or whatnot. So now And also there was another couple things that was going on. I ended up with a couple of health diagnoses that made it such that I had to have insurance, because I got the non-insulin form of diabetes, turned out, and I had really high blood pressure. Both of those are now under control, but making it so that I could not sit more than 30 minutes before I'd fall asleep at my desk. And I couldn't produce. I could not produce. Now I have, I go to, I'm on a routine. I get up, I go to work, I come back home, I write, I eat, I go and I read some more. And now I have designated a separate area because we moved here in June, and I now have an actual office where I go and I write. And I'll when I go out to the office, it's a separate outbuilding from the house, so it doesn't have as good of internet. Which I wish I could say that was a deliberate choice, but
it is now.
It will be going forward, yeah. Because I have to have internet because I do a lot of my writing on Google Docs, but
you just need it to work for Google Docs. You don't need it to work for Facebook,
no more Angry Birds,
games.
Angry Birds Fallout are my downfall.
So I have a question then. Have you noticed? Okay, so I think a lot of artists and creatives and writers obviously fall under that, have this idea of like, well, if in my perfect writing life, all I would have to do is write. Like, I can't actually write unless I have no distractions, 8 hours of uninterrupted time, like a perfectly, designated desk and, like apart from everybody. I think we have this idea that if that was the case, we would be getting our stuff done. Like, that's the difference between being able to get it done and not. But then when you actually look at the practical applications of your life and you see, I don't know if you found this, but for me, let me know. I've found that the busier I am, the more productive I am, actually, because I'm like, I don't have all the time. I have to make things work when I have time. So I'm getting it done.
Right. When you have constraints on your time, you get more productive. Also, something that was interesting for me is the realization, and this is something that also changed the way I write. Chuck Wendig, who writes the Terrible Minds blog, potty mouth mofo, but the guy can produce. He's got the right idea. One of the things that he was talking about, he's always on, is art harder. The idea that you cannot wait for the perfect set of circumstances to write. That you can't, and this is another mindset thing for me. I do not wait for motivation. I do not wait for the perfect set of circumstances. I finished the second Zombie Survivor book on a laptop in the back of a moving car, racing my battery counter. Because I'm in a car, in the dark, trying to type trying to get this book finished before I get home so I can upload it, format it, and and get it ready to go, because I've got my cover artist finishing up. And the thing is I realized then, if I can finish a top 100 selling book under those circumstances, I can write under any circumstances. And that's the thing, is I don't, too many times, to me, we are taught by our peers and often by our mentors to abdicate control of our creativity to some whimsical idea fairy. We're taught to abdicate control of our creativity, of our ability to write, to a third party that we don't see, understand, or interact with. We just wait for her to show up. And I'm going, that, to me, that is doing us as writers, as creators, a disservice, because we need to learn to own our creativity. If you're not motivated, start working, because sometimes the ideas rubbing together creates that friction, and there's that spark you've been looking for. Own your creativity. You don't get any worse or better when the muse is upon you. The only thing that being inspired does is makes it easier to give your best efforts. You always have your best effort in you, but when you're inspired, it's just easier to give that 110%.
That is beautiful. I love that so much. That's going to be one of the quotes for the show. One thing I think that you, one of my favorite books, just for the fun of it, is Julia Cameron, and she's the author of the Artist's Way. She has a little like cartoon book that she created. It's called How to Avoid Making Art. And it's like a comic. Each page is its own little comic with all of the excuses that we have for ourselves of why we can't make art. Like it's like the comedic version of Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. You're like, right?
Yeah, and we give ourselves these excuses. That's why I avoid having a writing ritual that I have to have. Because all that is an excuse for us not to make art. People ask me, what is your writing ritual? I don't have one. I sit down and I type. I bleed onto the page. I don't wait for inspiration. I don't have to have my perfect little mug of tea and my creativity candle going and things like that. That's the difference between having a hand drill and a power drill, maybe. But it is not necessary. If you want to, but that's the other thing. You've got to make the distinction. Am I going to write for a living, or am I going to write because it is therapeutic? I'm going to write for myself, because there are process writers. That's, people who write for the love of it. It's their therapy. It's their zen. It's the thing they do to relax and things like that. The act of writing in and of itself is really what they seek. And then there are what I call product writers. Finishing the book is what I'm after. Finishing the book is what I'm after, and you have to, if you're going to write for a living, I have to caveat that, you have to treat it like it's work. You have to let art be work, because you have to realize you're not going to burn out if it's work, because it'll be the most fun work you ever did. And also, the freedom. When I was writing full time, the freedom to do what I want. I met my agent on a whim. Basically, a friend of mine was going, "Hey, I'm going to be up at NorwestCon. Anybody wants to go? I need the, because she was up for the Philip K. Dick Award." And I'm going, "Sure, I'll go." So yeah, because I had the time, I had the money, I went. So, I wouldn't, and people go, no, I will work my ass off in order to be able to go, yeah, let's go to NorwestCon. Yeah,
yes. Yes. I totally get that, because I am also self-employed, and it's like, you know what? The freedom to be able to, take a nap when I'm not feeling well, but then get up when I am and work some more. That's right. Like something so simple, but like when I don't have to go to work when I'm not feeling well, I can nap.
Yeah, the trick is is making very, very few excuses for those times.
Oh, yeah.
The more you do that, the easier it is.
I also work until 10 p.m. regularly, and
Well, when I was writing full time, I regularly did not see the sun until afternoon.
Yeah. It's like it also can take over your life when you don't have the 8 to 5. You're like, the nice thing about the 8 to 5 is if you can get one where you can leave it at work. And then you come home, like you say, you have that guaranteed income, and then you come home, and because you left your work at work, then you get to have your fun work at home and not have to worry about it. Whereas self-employed people are often always working.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, you're always on.
How did you meet some of these other authors? Like, how did you meet? So you're like, I was talking with other authors, and you've done some name dropping. I don't recognize all the names, but I recognize that they are names of significant authors. So how did you meet these authors?
Mostly online. I mean, mostly online in groups, just, and talk to them, just chat with them, go, hey, such and such, but also do stuff that helps them out. Sean Chesser, for instance, every time he had a new book out when I was doing the zombie thing, I would just go, hey, Sean Chester's got a new book out. Yay! And I'd put his name out, put his stuff out, I'd read it, leave reviews. But also I would interact with them like they were people. Like, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Is this a good idea? I'm thinking about doing this thing. Is this a good idea? Yeah. And then always thank them. Thank you so much. I appreciate this so much. And then even after I've made it, once I made it in there and everything, I will regularly just occasionally just drop Sean Chester's name. Hey, you know what? This is the guy who made it for me. Patty Briggs, I will, I don't know her personally. I knew her husband more. Just meeting them online, talking to them, interacting with them, going to their blogs, leaving comments, stuff like that. I mean, for instance, Chuck Wendig probably doesn't know who the hell I am, but if I drop a comment on his page every now and again, that keeps me in his orbit. Now, Marguerite Reed, the one who got the Philip K. Dick citation for excellence, I've known her since she was 18. Back when I was ancient. But because never talk about a woman's age. before she wrote Archangel, we were friends before she released it. So I knew her before. But yeah, you just talk to them. You go to shows. I mean, I go to every show I can. That's how I met Shane Silvers. Shane and I know each other, by sight now. And he's another one huge, in marketing and things like that. Kimbra Swain, met her in a group, got to chatting on a thread, and she and I'm trying to remember if she and I disagreed or agreed on something. And I realized that I had read one of her books.
Isn't that fun? I love that so much. And I'm sure they love it too, where you're just like in a conversation with somebody and then they're like, I've read your book. And they're like, what? Or the vice versa.
Yeah. Also, the other thing is when I made my first point where I could actually join SFWA. Oh, you bet that $100 was in the mail. Because that got me into, oh, hey, Cat Rambo. Yeah, I just joined here a few months ago. My name's Ben Reeder, doing such and so forth. I was one of the first wave of self-published authors to make it in under that new rule. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things you basically, you get out, you talk, and nobody starts off making these contacts. Nobody starts off with these contacts. You have to get the hell out there. Met Lawrence Schoen, author of Barsk, Hugo nominee, member of, big important guy. I just talked to him in the hallway.
So your top recommendations for meeting people are,
meet people
are just like, meeting people. Put yourself out there, whether it's online or at conventions or conferences or, associations. Just put yourself out there and be a normal person, and not in like a needy way, but in a way like, hey, but it's okay to ask for help, because people love, like, if you have an intention, you're like, because what I thought was very great about what you said, and I don't know if anybody noticed this, but I did, is that you said, I'm thinking about doing this, and made it something very specific. What do you think about it? What do you think about this? Versus, how do you write books? Like you made it something where they can give you a really clear yes or no answer, or a very clear specific answer. And that's the kind of thing that people really love to be expert on. And they love to, not everybody, but a good portion of people will love to be able to help you if you ask them a specific question. And it can't be, if you can Google it and find their answer anywhere, that's not the kind they want. It's
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, pardon me, it's one of those things that sometimes you have to realize that, that they like the thing is also give them that recognition. It just one of those things you have to when you ask them for support and they give that to you, even if you don't agree with it, thank them. It just that is one of those things that is what makes it a different kind of interaction, and don't fawn over them.
Yeah. Well, I think there's like a tendency online to because we're so separate from each other so like, let's say you were like at the grocery store and, you knocked some things over and somebody came to help. And then at the end, they were a stranger. You'd be like, thanks so much.
Right.
And you would just be like, you'd say, thanks in a very natural way. But sometimes because we're so used to just typing out a few words, we forget that important last step of being like, hey, exactly. Thanks.
Exactly.
So I want to ask you, we never went back around to the rest of your story, but you are writing books now. And what advice would you give to other authors who are wanting to, make it as a writer and write full time?
Okay. Yeah. And really, I got that. I think that he's a sports writer. I met him at Missouri. His advice is go all in. The way I've always said it is write like Olympic athletes train. Write even when you don't want to. Write all the time. Finish but also listen to experts. Listen to your experts. Your cover artist is the expert. Listen to him or her. Your editor is an expert. Listen to him or her. Beta readers, look for patterns, because if one person says something, that might be personal taste. But if several people say the same thing, then you might want to start listening to that. You know what I'm saying? And it just, treat it like, if you want to do it for a living, then do it like you're going to do it for a living. Take the artistic approach out of it, because that's not going to work. The artistic approach is for when you're doing it just for you and you don't care about publishing. Value your work. Don't be afraid to charge for it. And I think that is another. I have a thing about artistes, the posers, the ones who go, and you can, when you read their stuff, you can just imagine the back of the palm going to their forehead. These are the people who sit around and I have nothing against writing in coffee shops. I've done it myself. It distracts me, but still, the people who sit around in coffee shops because they'll be seen writing. They were looking at all of the things that look like they're writing, but don't actually do any writing. So yeah, I mean, when you are going to publish, if you're going to do it for a living, do it like it's a job. Take the glamour out of it at first, because this is not a sprint. You're not going to do it in your first book. I have to write easily a dozen books. I mean, I've written 13. I think I'm on 13 now. And I'm still struggling. But you have to go in it for the long haul and treat it like a job, treat it like a profession, not like art. The art will come. The art is part of what you do. But if I had to boil it down, treat your writing like a marriage, not a booty call.
So true. I mean, like, you have to choose it over and over and over again. Every day you have to choose and say, yes, I am committed to this.
Yes, I am going to write, as opposed to, hey, writing, I'm not doing anything tonight. You want to come over?
Yeah.
Netflix.
Like, yes, you left the toilet seat up, but I'm still love you and I'm still married to you.
Exactly. You have to treat writing like a marriage, not a booty call. And too many writers do it that way. It's like, I only write when I feel like it. What? You only write when it's fun? If you were dating someone like that, how long would that relationship last?
Not long.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us about your books, like the latest series, let's say, and where people can find you.
Okay. The Demon's Apprentice is my primary series. It's the story of Chance Fortunato, aka The Demon's Apprentice. The most recent book is Prom Night, but start with The Demon's Apprentice. It's all on Amazon, Amazon.com, on my page. I'm exclusive to Amazon unless you catch me at a con, and then I have books with me. But Amazon.com. Look under Ben Reeder. One vowel all through my name, Reeder. And I can only afford the one vowel. I come from a very poor family, and.
Oh no! So many people who are much younger than us are not going to get that joke, but that's okay. I was raised on that with my grandma and grandpa.
Hey?
Love daytime game shows.
I actually got it from a I think it was the one of the old Zorro movies, the comedic one, where it was like 50 Shades of Zorro, Zorro the Gay Blade. It's like, what kind of woman can afford, four names, because Catholics and middle names, in the Middle Ages. But
you are so goofy. Okay. So, and do you have a website, Ben?
Yes, it is my name, bensreeder.com.
REEDER.
Right.
.com.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And on Twitter, I am the one true Ben.
The one true Ben. Although, do you have a link to there from your website?
Yes, that's another thing that's important. Make your landing page extremely user friendly.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, so everybody can go to bensreeder.com, and from there you can go to Twitter, Amazon, and any other social media things that he has, because that's
Amazon, Facebook, all that.
Yeah, awesome.
So
this has been great. Like, you had such an interesting story and so many like twists and turns, and yet you're still committed, and I really love that, because some people they don't have the ups and downs. Some people, they just start real down, and then after working hard for a long time, they take off. And you've got some of the it took off, and then there was a little dip, and then I kept going, and you're like still committed. And I think that is exactly what successful authors do. They just keep going.
Well, yeah, you have to be out there. You have to be out and doing things, because I like to say that most of my career has happened by accident. I met my agent by accident, met my first publisher by accident, all of that. But the reason that happened was because I had things going. I had momentum. I had things moving. I was there at cons. I was on pages. I was in social media. Somewhere along the lines, I was basically out there doing things. Yeah.
Even that first bit where you left your story on your desk, like even that was an accident, that you had already taken action, though. You'd already written the beginning of a story, and then somebody found it. So if that hadn't happened, every time taking action and getting out there a little bit. I love it. Thank you so much, Ben, for being here.
It's been a pleasure, and again, you get me talking about my favorite subject, and I can go for a long time.
I know. So. Me too. Actually, like, all of this is my favorite subject, like books, right? Creativity, and creative people, and and talking about mindset. That's it. That's what I love. Okay, and rather than, I'm going to stop it now, because we could keep going forever. I know we could.
We could.
But instead, we're going to thank everybody.
Sometime.
I know we would. We can't, and we can, because there's like tons of topics we didn't touch on.
Right.
But thank you, everybody, for listening. We hope this was helpful. Hugs and happy authoring here at Author Like a Boss. Hey, boss, you made it to the end of the episode. You're the best. Because of that, I'm going to give you a special invitation to find out more about the Author Boss Academy, where I and a bunch of really awesome authors hang out, have fun, and get stuff done. If you end up joining, tell me the secret word, and you'll get a special bonus. Find out more about the Academy at authorlikeaboss.com/academy. The secret word is nipples. Hugs and happy authoring. I hope to see you soon.
If you love the Author Like a Boss podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Until next time.